Yeah, I was saying that I had a wonderful conversation with Angela Puccia, who has a YouTube channel called Angela's Symposium, and she dresses up like this gothic chick, and she knows everything about kind of all of the different pagan subcultures. Um, she's Italian. I had a great conversation with her about all the different, bizarre movements that are sort of opposed to Christianity, or that are, in the culture. She comes from Italy, and she was talking about paganism in Italy, things like
Oh
that.
wow. Mm.
So it made me sort of reflect on um, this dynamic between the monoculture, or the monotheistic cultures, and the, let's say, what happens, in contrast to those, or as underground or hidden, or, and there's a lot
How does
of
she do that? I mean, it
strange
seems
things
like a
going on.
balancing act that she's like an academic on one side, and then she has like this goth kind of attitude. But it always, like it seems like a. How does she juggling that?
Well, yeah, that's what I asked her, and what's interesting. So I don't know. I assume she's a practitioner of some sort, but she doesn't speak about her own practices. She sticks within the academic, or the, let's say, yeah, the analytical approach to them. Like, she tries to be as objective as possible when speaking about them. On the other hand, yeah, the contradiction is she has this very artistic YouTube channel where she dresses up, and in all these sort of goth costumes, and with graphics, and so there's a theatrical component to what she does as well. So I thought that that's kind of, it seems like a paradox. And she said, no, no, it's not. It's academia should be fun, and not boring. So
I
in a
mean,
way, I think she's sort of like ahead of her time in terms of presenting academia as entertainment as well as academia. In other words, seducing and titillating people with information. Right. So
yeah.
it's where school and academia come together, which was Marshall McLuhan's whole point way back in the 60s and 70s, that most education exists outside the classroom these days.
Yeah. It's also prophylicity, and profile building and a performative aspect that
No doubt. Yeah.
that I mean, it catches the eye because it's so unusual, but I think we're all doing it kind of way. It's like having this infotainment, this
For sure.
kind of
We're all
stance
doing
where
it.
we kind of profile doing the profile building.
Yeah, and she's very good at it. I mean, she has a huge amount of viewers. And then you look at it and you think, oh, this is something kind of entertaining or fun. And then she's dispensing with pretty decent analytical academia. Um, that was very nice to talk to somebody who was very clearly rational, talking about these irrational eruptions of culture, or what we would consider to be irrational. I don't know if I would say that, but these sort of just very expressive, explosive aspects of pagan culture.
Like what, for example?
Well, she talks about Wiccan, for example. She talked about witches, and Wiccan is a new religion that was invented in 1950. And Aleister Crowley helped invent Wiccan, which
Hmm.
changed the perception of what we think of witches as being something positive. So suddenly, instead of witches being some negative kind of thing, the witchcraft turned into some positive, regenerative culture, thing.
Hmm.
Which of course leads to a lot of flaky new age stuff, but they're interesting phenomena to analyze.
Right.
Why people are being witches today in our
So why is that?
hyper-rational society. Well, I think because we've been in a very literate culture for so long, a very monolithic culture so long, and in a very sort of uh bland and dull and dogmatic culture, that all of these are sort of these are sort of I guess a monotheistic culture. I guess it's the integration of polytheism within that culture, and the need for polytheism, the need to have many gods, multiple expressions of existence. What whether it's cultic or whether it's, I mean, I don't think if you look at Christianity or Judaism or any other religion, it's the same business as things happening in paganism. There's cults, and then there's the more authentic ones, and there's
Mm,
she also is an expert on on Crawley and the Thelemites and magic and chaos magic and that kind of thing.
mm.
So
Yeah, everybody has their thing, isn't it?
everybody has their thing. Yeah.
I was wondering why that is, you know?
Yeah. Why don't we just choose the best thing or one thing, or why do we have to have such an idiosyncratic um aspect?
I don't know. It's like it's so funny because I was editing this book, and this book, and a woman, which is a psychologist, I think I mentioned this before. She was like railing against the patriarchy, right? So
Yeah.
the book is mostly, it's very good, right? But then in the last quarter of the book, it gets somewhat political, right? And then she starts going off of the patriarchy, and I was like thinking about the patriarchy, because that's her thing.
Yeah.
No, and I was like, okay, so first of all, that's a theory, right? It's
Mm.
it's not a proven thing. It's not real. It's a theory, and it's a theory that is like very well. Um, it's there's no consensus about that theory, and then you have like it's not a general theory. It's a feminist theory,
Yeah.
like an unproven feminist theory. And the idea is that there's always a kind of power structure between men and women there, always. And of course, it's unprovable because, first of all, you can't analyze all possible relationships between man and female. And
Uh-huh.
secondly, that's not the reality. Most relationships that, it's a cooperation
The
between
guy
men and
seems to be in control, but he's really not, you mean?
the what?
The man seems to be in control, but really being
No,
he's not really in control.
no, but it's a system of cooperation. That's why
Yeah.
we're here.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not a system of oppression. If
Yeah.
it would be a system of oppression, like the theory purports, then the society would look completely different.
Well, there are systems of oppression, no doubt. I mean, Saudi
Sure,
Arabia and places like
but
that,
let's
where
talk about the
women
West.
are put in bags, and so
That's
I get that, but
No, even in the West, I mean, I see that, and there's like lots of horrible stuff that's going on between men and women. So that's
yeah.
that's not the issue. The issue is the theory, and then you have, and we talked about this. What happens from the psychoanalytical kind of viewpoint is that man becomes the other, and it's like a reinstitution of the God image. The man,
Mm.
the big Old Testament like God that is oppressing like everybody. Um, but in the end, and I found it very funny, it's just an argument or meme which justifies for a woman being angry with men. That's what
Yeah.
the idea of
Yeah, that's
patriarchy.
right. It's well, yeah, I was thinking about that too. It's like, okay, we criticize the patriarchy. Why? Because you're angry at your dad?
Right.
Or something like that. Often people's motivations are suspect. And I think all of our motivations are suspect. I'm sure most of my motivations are pretty suspect, probably. You know,
Of course.
maybe I'm angry at my mom, so I'm going to become an incel or something. I don't know what, but I'll become anti men or anti women or anti whatever because of my psychology.
Right.
Um, not because there's some truth there. Yeah, I think that's what you're saying, right?
No, I'm saying it's like what it is. What patriarchy is an argument, is a justification of men being angry, women being angry with men because of the
Yes.
patriarchy.
Yes. And why aren't you saying, okay, let's have a nice matriarchy side by side, a nice patriarchy. In other words, powerful men and powerful women. It's always, let's bring down all these powerful men because they're bad. Because they're bad,
Yeah,
you
but
know,
yeah, and so
they're
you have to,
fundamentally bad. Whereas that's not always true. You know,
yeah. So like if I mean, what's with the horrendous shit that women do to men? Is it also like part of the patriarchy, or is it part of the matriarchy?
I think it's part of the patriarchy, of course. The reason that women do bad things to men is because of the patriarchy.
That's
Because
for
you have
everyone.
to have a, yeah, it's again, it's Gerard 101. You have to have a big scapegoat to blame everything on, and that big scapegoat has to be one thing. There can't be multiple causes for it, for such things. It has to
Are
be
you
one.
aware that 30% of all rapes happen from women to men?
I don't know. I'm not aware of the
No,
statistics.
I
I'm
just read
afraid to
that.
get into that department, that discussion, Tom.
No, but it's like you know, everybody has their thing. You know, it's not about the thing. It's about something else. There's a deeper psychological issue. You know what you just mentioned, and
Yeah,
you know, and you know, it's like we
we think we're
abdicated.
so
Huh?
we think we're so objective about everything. Like everybody believes that they're so objective about things. But
No, but
we're not.
didn't I think we had a conversation like in one of the earlier episodes. It's like we abdicated kind of God and the Christian God, and then with Nietzsche, and then came the feminism. And what feminism does, it re institutionalize him again. You know,
Yeah,
putting the big other, the big masculine other,
I would look at that.
unconsciously.
I would look at that in a different way. I would say that, I mean, one of the biggest problems in the United States right now is like fatherlessness. Guys with don't have fathers, and and almost all of the school shooters, for example, were people who had either no fathers or bad relationships with their fathers, or
Right,
you know, negative relationships to men. So so all of these school shooters are guys that didn't have positive male role models. So you could say that we need the patriarchy. That could be another argument. In
but
other words,
we
we need positive role models
right,
for guys so they don't go shoot up schools. And that the death of God is the death of a positive role, you know, psychologically speaking, the death of God is the death of a positive male role model.
right.
So it's not always a nice thing. Um, yeah. Also, if you read Eric Neumann's book, I was really shocked by this. There, you know, in ancient Crete, there was all of these castration cults. The
Oh,
religion of
really?
the Great Mother is just as brutal or more brutal. The religion of the Great Father, because I
Right,
do think that we've had a pretty patriarchal society in the past couple hundred years, male dominant, you know, in many ways, right? But then we don't want to exchange that for a matriarchal society either, because then we'll have castration cults,
right.
which is cancel culture.
No, but you need to integrate it. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, we need to have positive male and female. We need to have strong men and strong women, and you know, like the title of Camille Paglia's book, right? Strong men and strong women. Not
Yeah.
not 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 let's bring down all the men in power. No, let's I don't know. That's kind of my point, you know, which isn't against the feminism or what feminism has accomplished.
No,
Um,
but if you talk about patriarchy as a system, you also have to highlight the if you take a model like this for granted, then you also have to talk about the positive things that came with it, you know?
exactly. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, which is something that's inaudible to a lot of people, right? Because they have a scapegoat. And if you have a scapegoat, you can't see anything but the scapegoat.
right.
You can't see, and the scapegoat is, you know, men with power, basically.
So why is that, Andrew? Because like, I mean, Nietzsche said a philosophy or anything that somebody kind of produces, it says more about the producer and the person itself than the world, you know? And you mentioned, okay, so maybe if you have like this patriarchy thing, maybe you have to look at your own psychological issues. But the issue is,
Well,
it's always like this. You know, we're always kind of projecting our unconscious bias into the world.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, everybody. I mean, I just think because men and women are fucked up, right? I mean, they're just wounded and afraid of each other and tormented by each other, and and there's all these Oedipal things going on all the time, and
Right.
so there's an attitude of animus towards men, and there's an anima and there's also a strong anima in the culture right now. So when the culture loses its kind of definition roles of who people are, and you know, when the archetypes kind of fall apart and we have this sort of fluidity of everything,
Yeah.
and then the negative of the inverse comes into play, which, and the negative of the inverse, is sort of angry women and extremely effeminate men, right? Or
Yeah.
it's just the inverse of the of
Right.
the of the negative patriarchy, or the tyrannical patriarchy, or the it's just the inverse. It's not
Mm.
actually the culture has evolved, it's just an inverse of itself. I guess for the culture to evolve and to become healthy is a return to sort of a more complex version of positive male and female archetypal um, modes of being.
Yeah. Yeah, but then again, it's just a theory, you know? And what do we do with this?
Is it you're sounding postmodern again, Tom? This is where I often kind of, in a way, disagree with you when you just say it's just a theory. Like,
Well, it is just a theory.
it's a theory. Why is it just a theory? I mean, does it correspond to anything real, or
That what?
does it correspond to anything real or not, is the question. And how accurate is the theory? Or
That's what I mean.
yeah,
I
so
think,
so there's a bunch of theories, and some theories are better than other theories. They're not all just a theory in terms of being equally as intelligent or not intelligent.
but the question is if the idea and the concept of patriarchy is an adequate description of our society.
No, I don't think so. That's my opinion, but I think it's a bad theory, or an inadequate theory, or a theory that doesn't have enough conceptual nuance to it.
Exactly. So that's what I mean.
Yeah,
So it's like it's a very broad, uh, you know, idea that fails to address all the complexities of social life.
yeah. So it's an ideology, and an ideology is a distorted religion.
Because, like, if, for example, I was thinking about this. So if, I mean, there are horrendous things that men do to women. I'm not arguing about this. But if a theory like patriarchy is true, then you could point to an event which is only the result of patriarchy and nothing else. So if you look at a man hitting a woman and you say, "Oh, that's
Yeah.
patriarchy," right?
Yeah.
So it couldn't be anything else. It couldn't be just a marital dispute or a psychopathic kind of guy or whatever. The problem with patriarchy is you kind of fail to see where it is.
Yeah, you said that's the patriarchy, and so
That's it, and there's no other explanation for that phenomenon.
yeah.
And that's the problem, and that's where I'm saying it's just a theory.
Well, I would say it's not just it's just a theory. It's a poor theory. That you could have a better theory. Maybe you can't have an ultimate theory, but you could have a better theory.
Right.
Like, a better theory, it would take in, more, would try to understand, like, well, first, okay, so if you have tyrannical men, like stupid tyrannical men that are being violent to men, well, why is this happening? And what are all the different factors of it? And whether it be technology and, and religious dogma and all kinds of things.
So apparently, it is way more often that women hit men than the other way around. But we don't see it that much because men are stronger, and if men hit, It has way more
Oh
consequences.
yeah, yeah.
And men don't report it that often. But in fact, in relationship, I mean, if I think about all my previous relationship, the woman kind of always were kind of, I mean, like sometimes playful, sometimes less playful. When there was a, it's like kind of a physical altercation, right?
Mhm, mhm.
But it's like
Are
because
you
like
you saying you're a battered man, Tom? Are you a victim here? Have you been beaten by
yeah, no,
women?
I'm a very battered man. Yes, no, I'm a weathered man. That's something else.
A weathered man, yeah.
No, but it's
Yeah,
like the idea that a woman that punches your arm or because she's angry, that happens all the time. But
yeah.
but if a man does that, just because of the structure of his skeleton, his muscles, it's like the impact of that is way more grave. And so,
Yeah,
but
well
the act itself. Hmm?
I know that there's battered men and then some of the women go to the gym these days and they become much stronger than the guys that do martial arts, and there are
Right.
pretty pretty strong women out there that can beat the shit out of me probably, pretty easily probably. So but yeah, I mean, well, it's obviously if a man is beating a woman, it's something different than if a woman, usually in most cases, and if a woman is like angry and punching a guy, it's not the same thing
Yeah, but what are you
in
looking
most
at? Are you
cases.
looking at the effect of an act, or if you look at the act itself? Because these are completely two different,
Yes.
two things.
Well, the effect of the act is obviously what matters,
Exactly, but then the act of hitting itself is, it's you have to see that.
but I guess that's the question of like the legal versus contextual, right? Or because it's good that we have laws that you can't, beat somebody, I
Of
think.
course.
And so that's just a law about the act. That's so we have to have a literal thing. But then there's the context, which is often very different. Like, was somebody provoked, and in which way, and you know. But then there are absolutes, and it's like, okay, you can't do that. So it's probably more of an absolute for a man not to hit a woman than it is for a woman not to hit a man, I would say.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
most cases, but not in every case, of course, right? Because there's
No, but
always
I'm talking about the
exceptions.
nuance. You were talking about the nuance, and so when
Yeah.
there's this argument being made that, well, an example for the patriarchy would be all the men hitting women. That's like, okay, what are you looking at exactly? Are you looking at the act of hitting or the effect of hitting? Because like women hit men even more,
Yeah, and what about all the men protecting women,
right?
with their lives in many cases, in war.
Yeah.
So yes, it's complicated. Yeah, no, I mean, I don't. When people start to talk about the patriarchy, it's like my mind goes like, what are you talking about, really? I mean, and why do you have to use that? I mean, why can't you just you can talk about the tyrannical patriarchy, or you can talk about, but is system, well, okay, this is the question, I guess, is there are some systematic types of patriarchy, and I could see that in Saudi Arabia, right, where women are
Right.
literally oppressed, like very literally oppressed. And then there's liberal cultures where men and women are kind of like they've lost their traditional culture and they don't really know what to do anymore, and they're experimenting with all kinds of things, and so that's when confusion comes in.
Yeah.
Like, we're pretty confused these days about what is a man and what is a woman. There seems to be a lot of confusion around those topics, to the
Yeah.
point where, you know to the point where yeah, and people are fundamentally confused about whether they're men or women, and at the point where we question the category, if the category even exists, right?
Right.
That seems to be a question these days.
But isn't it
Is it a culturally constructed arbitrary category? Is it just a theory that you're a man, Tom, or
well? I mean, isn't I mean,
is it just
it,
because of the patriarchy?
No, isn't that like I was thinking about in the lines of isn't that manufactured confusion? Like we were talking
Yeah,
about media, like before the
yeah,
podcast,
it
right?
is.
And so you have like Chomsky who talks about how media, and Luhmann talks about this also, how media is kind of constructing the consent and the you know the things that we're talking about. And so you have like manufactured confusion about these things because, but if you talk to the people, nobody really is confused about this. They're, you know, it's like
Yeah, yeah,
even the trans people are not confused. Yeah, they know who they are, right? So you know, it's like nobody's really confused.
yeah. But I guess the ideological is it's a parasitical thing that the confusion is a parasitical thing that attaches. There's self-evident realities, but they're almost self-evident, and then even though the most self-evident realities are, there's a parasitical confusion that gets attached to that, and then people are kind of like very confused.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there were some, and then I was thinking about. I don't know if you've seen the Bud Light commercial, lady. Have you been following that?
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but yeah.
Sort of, and some of the messages I've been hearing. Okay, this person is anti-women, and then other people are saying this person is uh, okay, she's promoting trans rights. It's great, and then other people are saying that she's. But anyways, the whole political thing kind of is like destroying the brand, the whole cultural war stuff. It's just a parasitical. It's a bread and circuses. That's what you mean, right?
Yeah.
It's
Because
kind of
like why where's the
it's a bread and
nuance?
circuses to get people away from what really matters. Like, who cares if people drink Bud Light beer, and who cares if there's a trans person advertising it, and she seems kind of
Exactly.
theatrical and interesting and maybe kind of weird, and who cares like but shouldn't we be thinking about more important things?
Exactly. Because it's like, I mean, we talked about this. It's like kind of disproportionate.
Yeah,
You know, so when you're in Spain, it's like, and you have like LGBTQ day, like every other shop has the flag, and it's yeah, sure, it's great, but I mean, like in relationship to how many people really are affected, so there's like it's kind of disproportionate. You know, it's like there's a signal there, and then there's noise, and the noise is, you know, not proportionate to the real issue. There
yeah,
is a real issue, sure, but is that noise proportional to this? And I think like really isn't that really neoliberalism occupying the trans movement
yeah,
to
yeah.
sell
It's
their stuff?
trying to sell everything has to be for sale, or yeah, I think that's
But
right.
then I'm always wondering, it's like, I mean, we're getting off the rails here, but it's like if the argument that gender is kind of a spectrum true, then why isn't that also true that transsexuality is on the spectrum? So you have like people who like let's say 100% because like as this neurobiologist Robert Sapolsky said, the brain structures are somewhat different. And then you have on the other side of the spectrum, you have like kind of people that do that from out of other motives, let's say. Why is it a yes and no question without any nuance? Why is it so far out to think that there are people with psychological problems kind of occupying that movement, right? Why is that a strange thought? You know?
Yeah,
You know what I'm
yeah.
saying?
Well, I think it's because I guess it's the idea that it's a vulnerable community, and so if you're extremely vulnerable, then you also have extreme power, because we worship the victim. So the fact that these people could be, because it used to be gay rights. Gay rights is just, this was a powerful movement, and then through law and stuff, and now it's just a normal thing for there to be gay marriages, and That's fantastic. I think that's progress, right? I think that's like, but where's the radical new edge gonna be? It just keeps
Mm,
getting further and further and further and further and further. Where's the radical new edge gonna be? And so we seem to have a need for that.
right.
We need to have this radical edge to be somewhere. So that's just where it is right now, I guess.
Mm.
Um, who knows what's next? But I don't know. Like, yeah, I think that, yeah, sure, of course. I mean, of course, of course, when a culture is supposed to be oppressed and they're victims, then if you say anything against those people, then you're a bad person. So, if you try to, you know, I think that I wish that it would just be like, okay, there's three categories: there's male, female, and everybody else. Why not just leave it like that? Why do we have to be so specific about all these different categories? Why can't you just live and let live?
Yeah, that. And additionally, why are we as a culture, why are we drifting in this kind of attractor of victimness, and of oppression? So why, I think we talked about this, like why aren't we a heroic culture, that drifts, in a different way, where we can say, okay, we have some goals, we grow by approaching and overcoming even more
Yeah.
obstacles,
Well, I
instead.
think like the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I think at that time maybe the trans people in the trans that was very heroic. The guy and he was kind of like the cross dressing,
Right.
flamboyant cross
Yes,
dressing guy who's that's heroic. There's something heroic about those early cross
that's true.
dressing people, right? There's something beautiful and heroic about that, and then it becomes generic culture, and then it becomes something, then it becomes politicized, and then it becomes, but yeah, I think there's I think the heroicism happens where there's innovation and novelty coming. But if every single thing is a novelty, then there's no novelty. It's kind of like, I think we've reached a saturation point.
I mean, that's super interesting what you say, because like if you look at this phase, and this heroic phase, these people were like kind of thriving of conflict, and they were kind of anti-fragile, because they were kind of wrestling with chaos, and that would make them stronger. But
Yeah.
now it's like, oh, now I'm triggered, and I'm offended, and it's kind of the opposite. It should be the other way around. That's what I mean.
Yeah, it should be heroic instead of fragile. You're not heroic if you're always fragile, if you're mentally ill, you know.
Mm.
I'm not saying that I mean, there are large, I guess, I mean, in these communities, they're one of the reasons that they're isolated communities is because there's a large amount of mental illness there. We have to say that that's actually the case. Um, as you were saying, so
No, but
I feel like we're treading on dangerous
I'm not
territory.
saying
Just
I'm not saying
just
that.
talking about it.
What I was saying is that, I mean, Robert Sapolsky, this neurobiologist, and he explained it, that there's a part that the brain is somewhat dimorph, that the male brain is different than the female brain, and then that they analyzed the brains of transsexual people, right?
Yeah.
And that there's the part of the there's a part is concerned with identity and projects the electrical signals to the frontal cortex, and the male part, the male neurons, is kind of bigger than the female parts. But what happens with transsexual people, that there's let's say a male body, but they
Yeah.
have like this female part of their amygdala, and so their
Uh-huh.
brain tells them that they're female. And same thing happens with female bodies when there's like a male part of the amygdala. So this is for me like a hard science evidence that there are like transsexual people. That has
Oh
nothing to
yeah, yeah.
it has nothing to do with mental illness or
And
whatever.
and
That's
also they're a very important part of culture and always have been, and they should be. It's the victimization, the intense victimization, and that we're talking about, not the phenomenon itself.
Right. So,
Mhm.
and yeah, and that's what I was just saying. So there's a spectrum there,
Yeah.
you know.
Well,
And
yeah, there's obviously a spectrum. I mean, like on one side of the spectrum, you have the alpha male, and he's just dumb and violent. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you have the alpha female, I guess, and she's just kind of like a sexual bomb. And then in between, that's me and you. I mean, we're not. I mean,
you know
I
what I
think I
do?
think I have a lot of feminine qualities, and then I have some intense. I have masculine qualities as well, and I think we all have that. I don't see what's wrong with thinking of them as feminine and masculine either, which seems to offend some people. They think it's like biological determinism or something. But
You know what I suspect, Andrew?
male people are very like I'm mother. Male men are very motherly for what for example, or they're very like they look after children compared to most mammals. So we can't function unless we have both. If we're on the polar extreme, we're kind of like a serial killer on one side, and then a complete prostitute on the other.
Yeah.
You know
You know what I suspect?
what?
If you look at it as a spectrum, right? And
Yeah,
so you have like the 100% trans people,
yeah,
and you have the other ones. And I would suspect that the true transsexual people are still the heroic ones,
yeah,
because there's nothing that they have to, they because they won't identify as victims. They know who they are. It's like if and the farther you go to the other side, the more insecure the people get in terms of their own identity.
yeah,
The more the victim mentality just comes in, and then like every wrong word that you have to contend with like rattles your emotion and your mind and whatever. But I think like somebody who really knows that they are of a different gender than their body
yeah. There's
indicates.
also, like you described, the biological sort of reality of these people, or like the hardwiring or whatever. But there's also the fact that if you do yogic practices, for example, you're also changing your gender. And I remember this guy from Aikido. He was an Aikido master, and he said that when he was a young guy, he was a big, muscular, macho dude. And then over time, when he became an Aikido master, his body became entirely feminine and fluid, right?
Yeah.
This is the yogic process, is to become the opposite of your gender, right?
Oh,
And I
yeah.
also saw that in the monasteries, the women were very tough, like just like the cliche Catholic nuns they're very aggressive, right? They're very
Mm.
masculine. And then when I was in there was the old ladies with beards in the monastery, and that they become very masculine. And then also I saw the men becoming much more fluid and feminine. So there is a way in which I think that our biological sort of hardwiring, if we are heroic, we go through a transformative process where in ourselves, not just in meeting the other, where we go through some kind of gender fluid process. Um, I mean, yeah, I don't know, like Jordan Peterson, who seems to represent this alpha male guy, has become quite a dandy recently, as he's wearing all these suits and he looks very feminine, and he cries, and just as an example.
Yeah. Although I don't know. I have a new theory. So my new theory is, it's also speculation, but I think that you can see how much of the other gender you have integrated, the animus or anima.
Yeah,
It shows in the way you can uh, you can deal with the other physical sex organ,
the other physical sex organ.
because it's like
You
know,
have
when
to
you are
explain that to me, Tom.
yeah, when you are in bed
I've
with
never
a
heard
girl.
that theory before.
Yeah, no, it's a new theory. So
Okay, a new theory. Do you have some empirical research behind it, or
no, no,
what
it's
do
just
you
a
think?
theory. It's just a
Okay,
theory.
okay,
So if you're in bed with a girl, right?
yeah, yeah.
And so she doesn't really know how to handle your cock. You know, she gives you an end job, and then it's like it's kind of, you know, she doesn't know what to do with it. So I would
She
argue,
she just goes like she just starts going like this,
no, no, it's too soft
like
or
shaking
whatever.
it around like she has no sensitivity. She's like, "What do I do here?"
Yeah, no, she doesn't know what to do.
Doesn't
And
know what
so
to
I would
do.
say her animus is not well integrated,
I
right?
see what you mean there.
And so the other way around. So you have a guy who goes down on a lady, and he has to be very empathetic and, you know, sensitive.
You
But
have to be sensitive.
if he's just like male kind of thing, it's like then it's not pleasurable for her, and so he has to integrate his anima to really deal with the vagina.
I
And
fully
so
agree with your theory, Tom. I think I think you're onto
I
something
struck
there.
gold. I struck gold
It's
again.
absolutely true because yeah, and you know we learn this, right? We learn this because you know when you're a young guy, you don't know anything, and you
Right,
just like here I go, and then you're like, you know, why is this not working?
right.
And then through trial and error, you get better at the business, right?
Yes.
And so that's what, yeah, I think we need to integrate part of the femaleness to become a good lover, right? We need to know what it feels like to be a woman somewhat, or at least we
Yeah,
have to have some sensitivity. We can't really know, but we have to have some sensitivity about what it means to be a woman, or if you're a man, we have to have some sensitivity of, you know.
yeah. And then it's like for women too, because the amount of women with 35 that don't know how to give a proper hand job because it's like nobody tells them. And it's like, you know what I mean? It's
There's
super
an
weird.
educational, you know, lack in our, yes, this is the problem with education is you describe the equipment and you say what it does, but you don't necessarily give somebody some field work research.
Right. Exactly.
So we should do
Exactly.
more of this field work research, I think.
Right. Yeah, of course.
Right. Uh-huh.
Because
Do you
it's
think
like
we're
then you are with a woman that doesn't really, she needs to understand how that instrument works, and you have to be like kind of have to have a male approach to the cock to understand how to handle that thing. And it's just
yeah.
like if you're just female about it, like, you know, just like soft, and that gets you nowhere. You know, that's what I mean.
Mhm,
That's the theory.
mhm,
Mm.
mhm, mhm, mhm.
Anyhow,
Yes, indeed. Well, yes, I think we've come to the natural conclusion of this conversation. We've
yeah.
come to, let's say, we've come from our usual absurd, abstract, and explorative to the
So
real,
the gist of things, you
to
know.
the jism of things,
To the jazz, to the
the
jazz.
jazz of things.
Yes.
Yes, there we go.
I think apparently jazz comes from jizz.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah, yeah,
Mm, yeah.
yeah. To jazz means to. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I do. Wonderful.
Yes. All right. So.